When we ended part 9, we left Kratos and Atreus stranded in the middle of Helheim. They'd just been involved in a messy, chaotic fight with Baldur, caused by Atreus' rash actions, which not only threw the lot of them into the cold realm of Hell, but also destroyed the only gateway to Jotunheim in Midgard. Though Atreus accepted his mistakes and apologized to his father, vowing to not repeat them again, they must still find a way out and somehow figure out how to get to the realm of the Jotun. As Kratos and Atreus are making their way through Helheim, in the distance they spot Baldur once again, who it seems is having a vision of his own. Helheim, as you might remember, is a place that torments all souls that enter it with torturous visions of their past, and Baldur is having a vision about his mother. And who is his mother? Well, as it turns out, his mother is none other than Freya. Perhaps the only thing to come out of Freya's marriage with Odin that she truly cherished was the birth of their son Baldur, and acting as a loving and protective mother, she did everything she possibly could to make sure that no harm ever came to her son. Through her magical prowess, she made sure that not a single thing in all the 9 realms, barring one which we'll get to later, would ever be able to cause any physical harm to Baldur. This, of course, explains why Baldur cannot be hurt and why he cannot be killed. But of course, while Freya's spells did render her son immortal, they also had a bit of a side effect. They made it so that not only could Baldur not be hurt by anything whatsoever, but also that he simply couldn't feel any physical sensation at all. Pain, pleasure, nothing. This didn't sit well with Baldur. His very existence became a source of torture for him, and he hated his mother for what she'd done to him. The life he was living, he felt, was not a life worth living at all, and so he decided to not only speak to her ever again, but never even see her again, also claiming that if he did ever see her, he would kill her for what she'd done to him. Kratos asks Mimir if he knew about this, and obviously he did. He's the smartest man alive, or the smartest head alive, and he knows most, if not all, things. But of course there's a very good reason why he didn't tell Kratos or Atreus. Because, as it turns out, Freya had cast a spell on Baldur that prohibited him from divulging this information to anyone, for fear of the possibility that someone might try to use it to kill Baldur. Even if Mimir wanted to, he simply wouldn't be able to say a word of this to anyone. Which, by the way, is also why he cannot tell Kratos and Atreus if there's any way to break the spell and to kill Baldur. But Kratos isn't too worried about that, in true Kratos fashion. He figures that one way or another they'll find out eventually, and they do, but we'll get to that soon. For now, with Atreus and Mimir, who he now succinctly calls Head, Kratos finds a way out of Helheim, flying the ruined remains of a ship through the realm back towards Midgard. On the way there, he and Atreus fight off vast numbers of Helheim's minions, and once again Kratos encounters a vision of Zeus, this time of the moment he killed him, or more precisely beat him to a pulp with his bare hands. Atreus obviously has questions about what he's just seen, but Kratos brushes them off. The three of them reach Midgard once again, where Mimir tells them that there may still be a way to get to Jotunheim. The gate on the top of the mountain has been broken, and they can perhaps make the Bifrost work to once again allow travel to Jotunheim. The one way it can be made possible is by using Mimir's eyes, which were actually jewels that were gifted to him by the Jotun. That's easier said than done though, because currently Mimir only has one eye. The other one was inserted into a massive statue of Thor, a statue that the world serpent swallowed whole not that long ago. Remember that? Yeah. Luckily for them, Jormungandr is actually an ally for them in their quest, given his pure and simple hatred for the Aesir, and for other reasons which you'll have figured out by yourself by the time you're done watching this. He opens his mouth and allows Kratos, Atreus and Mimir to row a boat into his innards and look for Mimir's other eye. While they're inside, they feel rumblings and hear something like explosions from the outside. But other than that, their journey into the guts of the Jotun proves largely uneventful. They retrieve Mimir's eye and travel back outside. Which of course is when shit truly hits the fan in the most monumental way possible. Once again, Kratos and Atreus are attacked by Baldur, but this time the fights aren't just between the three of them. As the father and son get ready to take on Baldur in an epic showdown, Freya intervenes, viciously attempting to protect her son. And soon Baldur loses the one edge he has over his foes, his invincibility. In a seemingly innocuous moment, he punches Atreus straight in the gut, knocking the wind out of the boy. But that one moment seems to be more pivotal than anyone could have imagined. Remember how after Kratos and Atreus protected Sindri from the dragon on top of the mountain and killed the beast? You might recall that Sindri gifted Atreus with a bunch of mistletoe arrows to show his appreciation. Arrows which Freya burned in a moment of panic not long after, calling them vile and evil things. That's because the one single thing in the entire 9 realms that's capable of harming Baldur is mistletoe. And why is that important? Because in another seemingly inconsequential moment, right after their fight with the dragon, before Freya could burn the arrows, Kratos used one of the arrow's heads to fix one of the broken straps on Atreus' quiver. And when Baldur punches Atreus in the gut, he realizes that he got stabbed in the hand with the mistletoe arrowhead. And thus his spell breaks, leaving him vulnerable and open to attacks that, for the first time in his lifetime, will actually be able to cause him physical harm, and thus, by extension, may even actually be able to kill him. Baldur, though, is overjoyed at all the new sensations he's suddenly feeling, and this sudden surge of adrenaline drives him into a manic frenzy, energizing him even further. And so Kratos and Atreus take him on in a head-to-head fight, with the stakes higher than ever. Seeing that Baldur is in imminent danger though, Freya becomes involved herself, reanimating the body of the dead giant Thamur, and using the mountainous animated corpse as a weapon of her own. What ensues is a three-way fight of epic proportions between Kratos and Atreus, Baldur and Freya, and the fight lives up to the legacy of the series in every way possible, delivering spectacle the likes of which is rarely seen in any video game. The fight ends as Kratos and Atreus work together to bring Baldur down, while Atreus also somehow manages to utter the ancient tongue to summon the world serpent and defeat the reanimated corpse of Thamur as well. This particular bit will make sense in a bit, so just hold on. As Kratos is about to deliver the finishing blow to Baldur though, his son tells him that he's defeated and no longer a threat. His lesson finally learned, the way Kratos had intended all along. Kratos releases Baldur, who immediately leaps at Freya, grasping her throat in his hands. He begins to choke the life out of her, but Freya doesn't resist, apologizing to her son, and telling him that if taking her life is the only thing that will bring him peace, then she will gladly sacrifice herself. Kratos, however, realizes that he can't simply stand by and watch as this happens. Not because he wants to save Freya, though of course that has to be a factor as well, after she helped him save Atreus' life, but because this is not the example he wants to set for his son. And so the ghost of Sparta grabs Baldur. He says, "The cycle ends here," words that hold great meaning for a man who was himself, in a lifetime long ago, caught in a cycle of fathers killing their sons. He snaps Baldur's neck, killing him. Freya is understandably devastated. In a fit of icy rage, she vows revenge upon Kratos, telling him that she'll take everything from him the way he did to her. Atreus, being a child, doesn't understand her fury. In his eyes, his father just saved her life. But at the hands of Kratos, Freya has just lost the one thing she valued more than even her life, the one thing that gave her life meaning. And being a parent himself, Kratos realizes her pain and anger perfectly well. In her anger, Freya taunts Kratos, telling him that he can never change, that he's still the monster he always was. He responds by telling her that clearly she doesn't know him very well, and she in turn tells him that she knows him well enough, but perhaps his own son doesn't. And it's then that in a moment of calm resolve, Kratos decides to reveal his full nature to his son. Calmly, he tells the boy to pay attention and reveals that he comes from a land called Sparta, and that in his past he's killed many, many people, those who deserved it and those who didn't. More importantly though, he tells Atreus that he killed his own father, and the boy quickly puts two and two together, realizing that the vision they saw in Helheim was indeed that of Kratos killing Zeus. He laments that perhaps this is all what they're meant to be, caught in cycles of senseless bloodshed and violence, of sons killing their fathers and their mothers. Kratos, however, tells him that that's not true, that they must be better, and that they will not be beholden to their past, now fully able to accept and deal with his past with a newfound resolve to not repeat the same mistakes in the future. In the background, a despondent Freya walks off with the corpse of Baldur cradled in her arms. It's obvious though that at this point, Kratos and Atreus are definitely going to cross paths with Freya once again. The setup for her coming back as a possible adversary in the sequel is obvious, but even beyond that, the game goes out of its way to plant seeds for some very important stuff in the future. One of the side quests in the game involves Kratos and Atreus tracking down the trapped physical forms of the Valkyries, 9 female warriors of Odin's, 9 of his fiercest fighters, who watch over all the souls who enter Valhalla. The side quest essentially involves Kratos and Atreus freeing them from their shackles to the physical world, allowing them to return to Valhalla once more. And at the end of the long, drawn-out quest, it's revealed that the Queen of the Valkyries is none other than Freya herself. It's also revealed that after the death of Baldur, Freya decided to go back to Odin to retrieve her wings and her weapons, presumably to return to her complete powers and abilities as a proper Valkyrie. Is it possible that Kratos might come up against her in full Valkyrie form in the future? Well, it remains to be seen, but it's certainly an interesting proposition. Either way, for now, Freya isn't really a threat to them. Their biggest threat was Baldur, and Baldur is finally gone. But though their biggest adversary yet is now out of the equation, Kratos and Atreus' journey isn't quite over yet. With Mimir's eyes, they use the Bifrost and enter the realm of the giants, where the game's final game-changing revelations are made. Let's begin by talking about the giants. It looks like they're all dead. Every single giant, even in Jotunheim, has mysteriously perished. Their towering, humongous corpses are visible to see even from a distance, scattered all across the land. But how did they die? Who killed them? Are they all dead? These are questions that are left unanswered, but we suspect that will change with the sequels. Moving on to the more momentous revelations, as Kratos and Atreus walking through the ruined and empty halls of Jotunheim, they see murals painted all across the walls, and these murals reveal a great many things. First of all, it's revealed that Atreus' mother, Faye, was actually a giant, a fact that she'd kept hidden even from Kratos. Remember the last giant that was left behind in Midgard when all the rest fled back to Jotunheim? The one they called their guardian and was supposed to let the Jotun know if and when the time ever came for them to return to Midgard. That was Faye. So back at the beginning of the game, when Baldur came knocking on Kratos' door, he was actually looking for the Guardian. He was looking for Faye. He didn't know that Faye was the Guardian, he only knew that he was looking for a giant, and when he first laid eyes on Kratos, he just figured he was the man he was looking for. It was all one big case of mistaken identity. Odin had told Baldur that the Jotun would be able to cure his affliction that prevented him from feeling any physical sensations, which of course was false. Odin just wanted to find a way into Jotunheim himself so he could wipe them out completely and finish what he'd started years ago, preventing Ragnarok before it could even begin. It also turns out that Faye wanted Kratos and Atreus to come to Jotunheim for a very specific purpose, because she knew they'd see these murals, and because she knew they'd be setting into motion seismic events. That is why her final wish was for Kratos and Atreus to spread her ashes from the highest peak in all the realms, because she wanted them to come to Jotunheim. The murals on the walls depict every single step of Kratos and Atreus' journey so far, of their encounter with the World Serpent, of their fight against Baldur, of things that would not even have happened at the time when these murals would have been painted. But how? Because Faye knew every single thing that would happen to them. She saw every step they'd take along their journey, and she led them there. In a way, Atreus says she was with them all the way. But why did she do all this? Because it turns out Kratos and Atreus have inadvertently kicked off Ragnarok, the fateful apocalyptic war. A little later, Mimir tells them that when they killed Baldur, they triggered the events leading up to Ragnarok, doing something that somehow preponed it and brought it forward. Killing Baldur kicked off Fimbulwinter, a 3-year-long winter that, when it ends, according to prediction, marks the beginning of Ragnarok. A side note, this is actually a very clever interpretation of actual Norse mythology, because as per Norse myths, when Loki causes the death of Baldur, he kicks off Fimbulwinter, and in turn, Ragnarok. Which of course brings us to our final and biggest revelation. In all the murals that depict Kratos and Atreus' journey, Atreus realizes that he's been referred to by the giants by a different name entirely. Not Atreus, Loki. Yes, that Loki. While players may have spent all the game wondering when Loki might show up, the game reveals right at the end that Loki had actually been with them all along. And it contextualizes that revelation very, very well. Loki, Kratos tells Atreus, was the name Fae wanted to give him when he was born, but at Kratos' behest they named him Atreus, after a Spartan general he once knew. This all, weirdly enough, makes sense in the confines of actual Norse mythology itself as well. Loki is supposed to be the son of 2 giants, Laufey or Fae, and Farbauti, which it turns out is what the murals refer to Kratos as. Additionally, Loki is also supposed to have some very unique powers, an extensive and deep knowledge of language, powers of illusion, the ability to talk to animals, the ability to summon or transform into animals. All of these are, incidentally, powers that Atreus himself exhibits throughout the course of the game, in some form or another. For instance, while he can't transform into animals yet, his runic attacks see him summoning ghostly versions of animals. He also shows a potent and quick grasp on any language he comes across throughout the entire game, while some scenes also show him directly conversing with beasts. Loki, by the way, is also the father of the giant Jormungandr, among others. Remember how we talked about Jormungandr being from the future after he was knocked back in time by a blow Thor dealt upon him with Mjolnir? So yeah, even that somehow makes sense. It turns out the game is presenting its own unique take on the character of Loki, putting its own twist on him and showing instead his origins. But of course, while information is earth-shattering for us, the players, to Kratos and Atreus it doesn't really mean much. To them it's just ancillary information, and the thing that they really came here to do is finally within their grasp. The father and son head to the highest peak in Jotunheim, the highest peak in all the 9 realms, and finally spread Faye's ashes, saying their final goodbyes to her. With their journey finally over, at least for now, they head home for a much needed and well-deserved rest, one that has been a long time coming. But just hold on, it's still not over. The game has one final awesome scene to throw our way. In an epilogue scene that's actually all too easy to miss if players don't actually go back to Kratos and Atreus' home, it is shown that Atreus has a vision that hints at ominous events in the imminent future. Years later, Kratos and Atreus receive yet another visitor. The skies break into a furious storm as lightning rains down upon the land. The father and son rush outside, only to see a towering, bulky figure standing before their house, cloaked and hooded. It's clear that he's not a friendly figure. Kratos demands to know who he is, and almost as if in response, a gust of wind pushes back the cloak from the figure's waist, revealing the shape of a fearsome and massive hammer with electricity coursing through it. It is indeed Thor, and we cannot wait to fight him head-on when the sequel finally rolls around, whenever that might be. And that's it. That's the full story of the latest entry from start to finish, as detailed as we could make it. It's also, incidentally, the last we'll be speaking of this series on the Story So Far videos, now that we've covered every game in the series, at least until the sequel launches. But that doesn't mean we're done with Story So Far videos entirely, of course. We love making these, and we sure hope you love watching them. We have a feeling you're going to like the next one too. When we come back, we'll be recapping the entire story of Rockstar's seminal title, Red Dead Redemption, so stay tuned. And that wraps it up. If you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing to our channel. We upload new videos daily, so make sure you don't miss them by subscribing. We appreciate your support, and we thank you for checking us out.